A satirist basically wants to improve the world, and so they use humor to communicate to audiences. Wouldn't the world be better if we didn't do it like this? If we did it a different way? That's kind of the basic message of all satire. And so teaching people to do that is kind of feeding that part of me that wants to make the world better. Because I feel like if more people are communicating through humor, they're essentially passing on their ideas about how society can be better. And I speed up that process by giving them the tools early. So I'm opening the gates prematurely, some might say, to let these people out because we need them. We need more people to be funny. What is more important than leaving the world better than you found it? I can't think of a single thing more important than that.
Satire is like a corrosive that burns away conventional and generic thinking to get beyond them. So what do you discover lies in that's beyond conventionality? What is that undiscovered country beyond conventionality?
Oh yeah, that is the great frontier, greater than the West, greater than outer space, greater than the deep sea. Because I don't think we walk around day to day realizing just how enslaved we are by convention. The way we act, the way we communicate, the way we talk, the way we live, the way we dress, the things we think about, they're all very strictly dictated by the culture. And if you veer just slightly, just like one fraction of a millimeter off, and you are weird. There's something off about you. It's like if I did this whole interview like this, you would think, what's up with this guy? Why is he so weird? I'm just holding my hand up here. It's this slight shift. Like in the row of infinite parallel universes, this one is right next to ours. The only difference is my hand is up here instead of like this. And suddenly I'm a weirdo, and it's like something's wrong with that guy. Like, don't have him on your podcast. He's just weird. So there's a whole universe of different behaviors and different ways of being and different ways of thinking that I've always been fascinated by. And I've been fascinated by how people react when you do things differently. I told the story in that book you mentioned of how I crawled to school one day. So I did that with a buddy of mine, Troy Whipple. We saw this guy on one of these TV shows like Real People or That's Incredible or something. He broke the world record for crawling, and he crawled like 32 miles or something. And we thought, how hard is that? Like, we could break that record. So, and he had all these accoutrements. He tore car tires and put them under his arms so he wouldn't damage his arms while he was crawling and stuff, or his hands, I guess, and his knees. And so we hatched this plan to crawl to school. And again, just a tiny shift from walking to school, barely noticeable. Like if you were an alien coming from outer space, you'd say it's the same thing. They're getting to school. What's the big deal? But it was a scandal. It was, I'm still remembered to this day in that town, the small town that I went to high school in, as the kid who crawled to school. And that was fascinating to me, how you could just tweak convention, an infinitesimal amount, and you could get that kind of reaction. Pretty amazing. We are absolutely enslaved in every way.
If a lost tribe of pure satirists who think like you was ever discovered, a tribe where everyone is a satirist and non-satirists are unknown, that's not part of the experience of this tribe. What do you think life would be like in that tribe?
Well, it's a very good question, and I can't help but think of the many, many tribes of Native Americans for whom humor was such a huge and integral part of their culture and the way they communicate, and still is. When they were protesting the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, they had a lot of college kids show up to protest with them, and they tricked them and pretended that they were inducting them into the tribe with this ceremony that they made up, and they're laughing about it after the fact. And this is what they do. They razz each other. And, it's too bad that we kind of obliterated most of those people, and they're living on reservations and they haven't integrated into the culture. But some of the finest comedy comes out of oppressed peoples. And you look, the reason oppressed peoples are so inclined to comedy is because it's a coping mechanism. It's how they, as a culture, deal with some of the horrible blows they've been dealt in their history. So you go through a few generations of that, and it just becomes part of the language. The language of Yiddish is so funny, just the words are funny. And so many other aspects to Irish, Black, Jewish, Indian culture are just inherently funny. The way they communicate, the way they talk. And I mean, again, I think that's delightful. It's a difference that I celebrate and love, and wish we had more of. I come from kind of the opposite. I come from a kind of Northern European culture. My people don't really have a sense of humor. We believe meaning in life comes through suffering and hard work. And I don't know how I ended up with the humor bug, but definitely an odd duck.
In your book, The Elements of Humor, you describe this part of the psyche as universal, found in early human beings. You call it, in your words, a mysterious force, a mischievous spirit, a devilish spirit, and a trickster. You invoke a new mythic figure of Prometheus, who brings satire and comedy to human beings rather than stealing fire from the gods, for which he was punished, as a satirist might also be punished. So what does it mean to you that the consciousness of satire is archetypal or instinctual?
Well, I think of those two things as different. I do think it's instinctual. For whatever reason, we evolved with this ability, this need to have some portion of our society, their job is to look back on society and make fun of it, comment on it, to the delight of everyone else. We've always had that. We deal in character archetypes. So there are certain types of characters. You mentioned the trickster, and the satirist, that's their archetype. They are a trickster, often tricking people into thinking that they're partaking of serious opinion when really it's satirical. Mark Twain did that. He's a big believer in that, the satirist as trickster. And when we communicate to audiences the foibles of other human beings, we use archetypes that they love and have seen come back again and again and again, since the ancient Greeks. There are certain characters that we like that are archetypal. And one of the best things about being a person who kind of thinks of themselves as at least wanting to not be constrained by convention is that I'm an extremely accepting person. I accept, and not only accept, it's not like tolerance, it's a celebration of difference. So, that phrase, celebrate difference, like I'm all over that. That's my credo. And so at The Onion, I was always hiring people who were neurodivergent. I would celebrate the kind of behavior that would get people fired at a normal job because I saw the value in that person inherently. And I think that comes from that embrace of, nonconformity. So I think it's a great quality. It's one of my better qualities. I really do see the best in people to a fault in some way. I think it only helps society and it moves us forward. And yeah, I don't like the word tolerance because it feels like, well, I'm tolerating that person. Like
Mm,
And
yeah.
I do a lot more than tolerate. Like I prefer that type of person. Prison, like, and then obviously there's a whole other dimension of this conversation we could go into about, you know, people who don't uh, ascribe to moral behavior because it's conventional, and so they're in the 99.999% that I talked about, and they're like, well, I shouldn't abide by any rules of morality. And I'm not one of those people. I'm very, very solidly in the camp of there's a moral code that humans have developed over our millions of years of evolution that I believe in, and we all kind of know it inherently, and we've tried to write religions and rules and stuff around it to codify it. But I don't want to be so different that I'm like hurting other people or harming the world, or I want to do the opposite.